Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Next Big Future. Today, we're going to talk about the near-term and far-term future of humanoid robots because there have been some huge announcements for the big companies in humanoid robots. There is the um, Chinese companies that have had some major announcements, um, and then also Figure AI and also Tesla have also made major announcements. So let's first get into what they are and then discuss the implications of that. So there was a video dropped by UBTECH. UBTECH is a Chinese company that has over $5 billion of valuation. They're on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange at about $40 billion in Hong Kong dollars. They were previously, years ago, copying Boston Dynamics, but they have since switched over to copying the various humanoid robots of companies like Tesla and Figure. Here we see their robot in a car factory, and they have them in other factories in the video that they are showing their work, and they have large numbers of these bots. This was Dr. Alan Thompson in the corner there discussing their work. He's an AI expert. They include DeepSeek on their UBTECH Walker robots. So they have integrated the latest Chinese best AI into their robots, and they're working in warehouses and many other tasks. They show them by dozens, probably. I think they look like they have hundreds of these robots doing work in useful settings. Another survey of the various robots from 2024, there's about 40 or 50 human robot companies. And we've previously had a video where we looked at 5 of the US and Western companies, including Agility Robotics, OneX, Figure, Sanctuary, Tesla as well. So looking at UBTECH, they've had about $940 million in funding from their total valuation of $5 billion. So they do an IPO and they raise a certain amount of funds. They probably got close to $1 billion worth of actual funding, but their value is higher. They're targeting 1,000 robots in factories this year. And it looks like, based on the videos they've released, that they're well on the way to doing that. They're considered a leader in China, and they're testing in car manufacturing, and they're trying to get their production down to $50,000 per robot or less this year. So actual deployment and implementations. Another one, Unitree. Unitree has some robots that have like hollow heads and that kind of stuff. It's a human robot. They're also doing about 500 to 1,000 robots this year. They sell them also for like $16,000. You can just buy them and use them. Purdue University here in the United States, it has a robot club that has some of their robots and are using them. So they are looking at more commercialization of them, focusing mainly on the hardware so far. Oops, sorry about that. So let's see. Are we seeing, what am I doing here?
See a Wall Street Journal article?
Wall Street Journal article. Let me just stop sharing. I think I had made a mistake there. Let me just.
Sure.
Okay, so let me. Unitree. Okay, so let me share again. Okay, so in terms of the size of some of these companies, Tesla has now spent billions on robotaxi and on their AI training cluster, 50,000 H100s, and then getting to 100,000 H100s, which they're also using for Optimus. So based on their spending, $2-3 billion per quarter on these things for research and AI, you could kind of classify their human and robot funding levels at about $10 billion so far, based on like how much assets and stuff that they're putting into it. So then UBTECH, Figure AI are down in the near $1 billion level. Boston Dynamics also at that $1 billion level, but I feel Boston Dynamics has pretty much wasted their spending on things that don't matter. Unitree is down there, and then you have Agility. So in terms of even though everyone has a bunch of robots, actually scaling them and scaling the intelligence is something that is, um, I think, different from doing small deployments of 1,000 bots. Like if I custom built 1,000 cars, it wouldn't have any relationship to being able to make 1 million cars or 5 million cars, right? So similarly, Tesla had a all hands meeting where they talked about scaling to 5,000 to 6,000 robots this year with parts for 12,000. And Figure I said they can make 12,000 robots. But I have the belief that Tesla also mentioned that that they would scale to 10 million to 100 million bots per year. He didn't give a year on that. But if you could scale a cybercar factory to 5 million vehicles per line, then making a line that can make 50 million robots is not out of the question. So having that mass production of scale is, I think, what's going to really matter for the long-term future of humanoid robots, which I have this table here where we have the top part is how many humans we have doing work.
Mm.
And in the 1970s, we had 450 million people doing work. It was basically the developed world. If you weren't counting the agricultural, dirt farmer, like more or less productive uh, people, you're just looking at the developed world working in factories. And then by 2020, after China emerged and joined the workforce in most of other Asia, then you're at 2 billion people doing work, and then the developed world maybe totaling 3.3 billion total laborers. Um, I previously had assessed maybe 2040. If you add in a lot of robots, 10 billion robots, they can get to
Mm.
this combined human and other things of 20 billion. So the economy going from 1970 to 2020, 4xing, 5xing is basically the rise of China and Asia, including into labor. So if you look at this as kind of super high level look at GDP, that's what that is. So if we can get to 10 billion robots making 1 billion per year, then you can get potentially 10 times more productive work, especially if those each one is worth more than a person that can do 4 shifts. You could get to effective 20 billion people by getting just 5 billion robots combined with what humans are. So in terms of the rise of AI, we would then look at the table down here, getting to large levels of human equivalent at 500 million in the 4 lines down. That'd be 1 trillion hours of possible thing of work. And if it was only at $10 per, then you would justify these $80,000 prices, but then you're looking at $10 trillion of valuation there because $10 per hour times 1 trillion hours. If you get to that 20 billion human equivalent, which could be just 5 billion bots, if you're producing, 500 million bots per year, which is more than the 100 million cars per year, you're looking at that kind of numbers through the 2030s, you can get to these really insane numbers, which would potentially give you 40 trillion hours of labor, and it would massively increase the size of the world economy. So it's that kind of potential near-term multiplier of human labor production that would be the potential if you can get to things to truly mass scale. But even the near term of like 10 million, 100 million bots, that would transform all of manufacturing. Where Elon talked about getting a cybercab factory producing one car every 5 seconds out the end of the factory, which would be 100,000 vehicles per week versus 13,000 in the Tesla Shanghai factory, which is the best factory in the world now. So instead of 1 million cars per year, you'd be looking at 5 million cars per year per line. So getting that 5x productivity out of a factory using perhaps only 20, 10,000, 20,000 Tesla bots, um, along with your casting machines and other equipment, could be this the beginnings of this massive multiplier to the world economy. Um, so that's basically the overall view. So taking some stuff that Elon announced, taking the things that some other companies have announced in terms of like the near term in the few thousand to 12,000 robot range this year, and then the question is, can we scale up 10 times, 100 times each year thereafter? So what's your feedback on
Yeah,
that?
so it was interesting as we were watching, I was thinking back to my very, very first experience seeing the Optimus bot when the one that they had put together from hardware store, probably stuff that they bought at the hardware store or on Amazon,
Yeah.
and came out on stage. And at that moment, I said that day on a video that I could have purchased 10 of those for my factory, and they would have been useful then at that moment.
Right.
So I was looking at those ones you were just showing that, they have awkward hands, they're clunky, they're not nearly as cool as even the figure or the Optimus. And yet those are doing effective work in the factory because a lot of the jobs, they don't require sophistication.
Hmm.
And so this is one of the conversations that you and I've had a little bit already, and I've been thinking about a lot is, are there going to be niches for these different companies?
Hmm.
So Elon, he may have the Model 3 and the Model Y of the vehicles, I mean of the bots, and really control the industry and be making maybe half of all the bots in the world or more,
Hmm.
which would be great for us stockholders.
Hmm.
But it may turn out that, lots of little companies, when I say little, 100 employees, 200 employees, 500 employees, a lot of little companies may make their owners, their stockholders, their CEOs very rich by making bots that are good enough.
Hmm.
And maybe 5 years from now, a Tesla bot is 30,000, as he says, he plans to sell it for. And maybe the market says, hey, la di da, we'll pay 30,000 for that all day long. But there will be a Leaf version,
Hmm.
a Leaf bot
Hmm.
that only cost you 10,000 or cost, yeah, or maybe 8,000,
Hmm.
that will be very affordable for people that maybe can't afford 30,000 or don't think they can, and will give them whatever it is that they need to get the job done.
Yeah. So I think it needs to be who that some of these companies that are working on the humanoid bot need to merge with companies that are, some large company like a Foxconn that is a masters in manufacturing where they make a lot of, a billion smartphones a year. Someone that really has that scale in manufacturing needs to take over these guys, take their tech, and then be able to execute in order to be a serious competitor to Tesla. That, Tesla is going to go to a million bots per year as early as 2027, right? That's a possibility where they go from 5,000, 10,000 this year,
Mhm.
50,000, 100,000 next year, to 500,000 to a million the year after.
Right.
Getting to millions of bots is as important, I think, as getting to a million cars per year. So you're not a major car manufacturer if you're not really making a million, 2 million, the biggest ones make 10 million cars per year. So getting to that scale, and it's difficult to move up from that. That um, Mercedes, BMW in the 2 million car per year range, Honda at 4 million, 5 million, to get to the 10x, 100x level, to get to or even for phones, right? Like plenty of companies were making um, 5 million, 10 million phones per year. But the ones who went to 100 million, then a billion phones is a rare thing that takes a lot of execution to make that happen. Um,
Yeah, so what I'm thinking of here, Brian, is let's say I wanted to get into the humanoid robot business, and I have no plans to compete with Tesla. It's not even on my agenda.
mhm,
And I think to myself, okay, what if I look at the plumbing business,
mhm,
And what the plumber has to do is get underneath houses,
Hmm.
get into attics,
Hmm.
get up on roofs, um,
Hmm.
and maybe a 5'5" bot is not the right answer for those kinds of situations. Still want the humanoid form, still want it to have all these capabilities, and maybe a third arm
Hmm.
would really be helpful to be able to hold this part of the tool while it did something with this tool, and at the same time, anyway. There's all kinds of reasons. I'm sure as you've been working around the house where you sometimes wish you'd had a third hand. And they
Right.
even have tools they call third hand tools.
Right. Right.
So I'm looking and saying, okay, so I'm going to build my robot,
Yeah.
and I'm only going to make 10,000 of them a year,
Yeah.
and I'm going to sell them for $10,000 a piece. And let's see, I always do my power of 10 problem. Is that 10 million in sales?
But you'd have to have a truly a distinctive, unique. I really need to have that
Yeah.
third arm niche.
I'm saying that there's a lot of situations like that.
Yeah.
I'm saying that there's a lot of situations where the size, the height,
Hmm.
the ability to lift,
Hmm.
you might have a situation where you need not 40 pounds or 50 pounds. You want this thing to lift 100 pounds. And you've
Right.
got lots of applications for that. Or you want it to be having, um, yeah, again, a third hand or a very strong grip. I mean,
Hmm.
you want it to have just, I can think of millions of specific situations that this basic humanoid robot won't have.
So basically, you're saying that there's a huge market for the industrial machinery type thing. So basically, right now you have the car makers making the mass market cars.
Right.
But then you would have military cars. You'd have military
Lamborghini.
trucks. Yeah, the Lamborghini thing. So highly specialized niches that are way off. I'm not going to modify the um, a Model Y or a Ford F-150 to do something. I can do some modifications so that there is a
Right.
market there where people come and do super modifications of existing vehicles.
Mhm.
Like actually Waymo is kind of that category.
Right.
They take a um, Jaguar I-Pace or whatever like that, and then they put in all the LiDAR and other things or to highly modify it.
Right.
So for industrial equipment like having a bulldozer, having a steamroller, that you would make something where the base vehicle is entirely different in terms of the engineering, and then
Yeah.
that would be the niche that where you could find enough variation to become highly profitable.
Yeah. You also have a situation, and it might be where you would have a high manufacturing number, but you might have a situation, let's say in India or China, where a $30,000 bot is too much.
Hmm.
So you still want to make lots and lots of them because you want to get your cost down. Let's say maybe you get your cost down to 3,000. And
Hmm.
so you can sell this for 5,000. And then some factory in China, it makes sense where or in India makes sense where it wouldn't make sense at 30,000.
So that goes to the Wuling Mini kind of electric car, where
Yeah.
it's at $5,000
Yeah.
or $3,000. So basically, that kind of um, high performance golf cart kind of thing would
Yes.
be where you're looking at for the vehicle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's very interesting.
So
So,
I see lots of opportunities. So you've got over 100 companies now that are out there vying for space. And it could be that some of these makers will end up. I know there's one maker that has already said, all we want to do is make healthcare bots.
mhm,
Not interested in industry, not interested in home. Not
mhm,
all we want to do is make something for the nursing home and to help the nurse in a hospital situation.
yeah,
That's all we want to make. And
right.
so whatever they're doing to it to make it softer, gentler, I don't know, what their thinking is in terms of that unique niche, but that's their niche.
Right. 1X Technologies puts a very soft cover, like a suit,
Yeah.
over that to make the padding, so it's looking for that home market situation. So yeah, so
And you have to
definitely.
lift, and you have to lift, people that are heavy,
Mhm,
get them into their bed, this kind of thing.
mhm.
Very different kind of situation than I don't think Optimus is going to be able to lift a 200-pound person, and get them gently into bed.
Although, if you have them operate like a human nurse
Right.
cannot lift a large person as well, but they have pulley
Special.
systems
Yes, right.
on the ceiling where
Mhm.
they
Yep.
would have a sling
Right.
to move the person. Yeah, so it's um, definitely something where this year, based on the announcements, we're looking at the range of 10,000 to 20,000, but within 2 years, we're looking at who can scale to that million, 2, 3 years, who can scale to the million bots the quickest, and then what are the major niches? Because people can think that they have a major niche
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it
yeah,
could be
yeah.
profitable for a while,
Yeah.
but then is it sustainably profitable? Is
Well, that's the normal situation in small business is
Yeah,
okay, who shows up at the trade show this year and what do they have,
right, right.
that I
But
don't.
in terms of um, the longer term thing is that you could have not just small business, but you could have someone making a million bots, and in this world of potentially a billion and many billions of bots, a million could be a small niche. It'd be like,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Or you could have a situation like a Foxconn. Maybe it's not as big as Foxconn. Well, I did this all the time. When I had my small business, I was looking for suppliers,
Mhm.
and you had this supplier over here. If you wanted to make a million of something, you went to them.
Right,
Okay, but if you only wanted to make 20,000 a year, you went to China.
right,
You weren't going to find anybody in the United States that would set up to do 20,000 or something. So
right.
if you wanted 20,000, you went to China. So you have that situation as well as to what, based on the level of what you're trying to accomplish, you may be going to somebody who makes lots and lots of robots.
Mhm.
But if you want one that has three arms, well, you can't get that done in the United States, but China has got this company that'll give you 20,000 a year with three arms.
Although the using bots to make bots situation,
Yeah.
then there could be an explosion of manufacturability
Yes.
where
Yes.
where making that, but there'll still be a supply chain of the chips,
Hmm.
and because each one will need a very powerful chip in there, as well as the batteries and the actuators, and getting those things to a very large production. Um, yeah.
Now, when it comes to scale production, I think we can both agree. I don't think that Elon thinks, and I don't think anybody thinks, except maybe for Figure, that they're going to compete in terms of numbers.
Hmm.
I mean, I just don't think that Brett Adcock is going to somehow figure out how to outcompete Elon Musk
Hmm.
when it comes to quantity manufacturing, quickly building buildings, quickly building lines, uh,
Hmm.
making sure that it's all working well. Elon said the other night, right? He
Hmm.
said,
Right.
I am the best manufacturer in the world. I know more about manufacturing than anybody else. I mean,
Right.
he
Right.
was not, he was not, it's kind of like I said the other day, I might know more about Elon Musk than anybody else.
Right.
I've been studying him for 12 hours a day for 6 years.
Yeah.
So I might know more about it. So, you can make these bold statements sometimes. And in his case, I think he's probably right.
Right. So I think it's because it's the combination of super intelligence that the main heart of getting to the billion bots is having the AI data center, the Cortex, the Colossus, with a million GPUs, 3 million GPUs, driving that intelligence, driving that mainstream manufacturing productivity activity, and also to be able to build bots that make bots, bots that can make cars, to drive those multi-trillion dollar markets that will um, be um, the main competition. And the question would be which companies could partner on the AI side as well as the manufacturing side, and all the pieces that are needed in order to deploy millions, tens of millions, 100 million bots at scale. Because I think if Tesla hits 1 million bots in 2027, I think by 2030 they could be getting to 100 million bots.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
So Elon, I don't think Elon has said this. I think Brett Adcock actually said it, but I think somebody else that I trust mirrored it. It might have been Jeff Lutz. That building these bots is way more like building an electronics item than it is like building a car.
right.
And now then you have the statement by Elon that they can make the robotaxis, or I'm sorry, the cybercab, one per every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, that's now you're talking about electronics levels for a car.
Right.
You can- and and so if they can make the bot one every 5 seconds or beat that, because it's easier than a car,
Mhm.
and do it in less than 5 seconds, all of a sudden you're talking about, a million square foot factory could turn out. I think I figured that I think I said I think when I did my numbers because I built a couple of factories and I think with all of you got to think about when you're thinking about building a factory, you got to think about the supply chain. So how much space do you need for the parts to make sure you never run out? And then how much space do you need to store the finished products before they get shipped? And then how much space do you need to actually build the components and the finished product? And I think I figured that Tesla could maybe make 1 million bots a year in 300,000 square feet.
Mhm. Right.
So now if you maybe just talk about, 3 times that, which would be a small building for Tesla,
Mhm.
he has 1 million square feet, you might be able to do 3, 5 million, and maybe you get a second floor or a third floor, and all of a sudden you can, at 1 million square foot, maybe 3 million usable. You're talking about that 10 million a year in one building.
Right. And the when you're at that 10 million to 100 million level, like if you're making 100 million bots and we're all in the United States, you're basically adding almost the entire, you actually more than the entire workforce of the United States because those robots will be able to do 4 shifts versus a human
Yes,
doing one.
yes, yes.
So it would be, this would be totally world changing, economics changing activity that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think people, I've mentioned this a few times already, but I think it's worth mentioning again. What's going to happen when you've got that kind of workforce? I mean, yes, it'll eventually allow you to put one in your home, and yes, it'll allow, people. Maybe it'll be 3 to 1. So we may need to build enough bots to get to a billion bots just in the United States in order to satisfy the TAM. But what people don't think about is my favorite example is litter control.
Hmm.
Right now, even in the United States, where we are pretty conscious about litter, nothing like Singapore,
Hmm.
nothing
Right.
like Tokyo, nothing like Seoul, but we are pretty conscious about litter, and yet we still have tons of it. We have
Hmm.
it in the center dividers of our freeways, which is a horrible thing. You're looking at the whole time you're driving is all this litter. You've got it at the beaches, no matter how much you try to clean them. But all of a sudden, if you've got bots for this price,
Hmm.
you could have bots up and down that freeway center divider all day long,
Yeah.
taking care of the litter. I mean, that's just that's one example of where we could use millions of bots to make our lives more enjoyable.
Yep. So it's definitely going to be a world-changing thing, and we're going to have to see who can keep pace. Because I'm not believing that the current players can do it. They need to definitely get one or two other mergers. So basically, it's like OpenAI, Gemini, DeepSeek. Like the
Right.
ones who are putting
Right.
the AI, I think would be the ones wagging the dog, and then the manufacturing at scale. I think you would want to see a Foxconn or some other major manufacturer who is doing something at scale to
Yeah.
really step in a big way. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. I expect it to have some announcements over the next year or two, because if you're going to do it, you have to start putting those major pieces together. Um, so anyway, we have of course some other videos for this week. So please follow Randy's channel and mine. So Randy Kirk, and we'll put the links into the description. And please comment and let us know what other topics on humanoid robots you want us to discuss. So let's talk next time.